Good afternoon. Today in Westminster we are interviewing Philip Davies, who is the Member of Parliament for Shipley in West Yorkshire. He was elected as a Member of Parliament in 2005 and re-elected in 2010. A few personal questions. Why are you interested in politics and why did you become a Conservative as opposed to Labour or a Liberal?
Blimey. Well, to be honest, I was brought up to be interested in politics, and I was brought up to be a Conservative. It was compulsory in my household to be a Conservative and to be interested in politics. And so I think, in many respects, lots of people develop their political views through their parents. And I think that's perfectly natural. If you, which I hope people do, respect your parents, it's inevitable you're going to respect their opinions as well. And so it seems to me clear that you're likely to follow in that situation your parents' values and therefore from their political values. So I was brought up to be a Conservative. I was born and brought up in Doncaster, where there aren't many Conservatives. And my dad was involved with the local Conservative Party, and he used to get me out when I was old enough to deliver leaflets and knock on doors. He had me out delivering leaflets and knocking on doors, and I used to love elections. We never used to win any, but I used to love elections, and so I've always been interested in politics. I was brought up and I was always involved. I never really envisaged becoming an MP. The thing that got me into that really was that in my late 20s, I got fed up with politicians. Nobody ever seemed to say anything that I wanted to be said, and so as a consequence, I decided to try and get on the approval list of Conservative candidates. I felt sure they would never want me, and I'd never be accepted, but I just kept getting through each stage of the process, much to my surprise.
Since entering Parliament, what's been your greatest achievement?
Blimey. One's general and one's specific, I think. The general one is that the thing I feel most proud of doing in Parliament is standing up and speaking up and saying things that I think if I didn't say them, nobody else would. And I'm always proud of myself when I do that, because I think for a parliamentary democracy to work, everybody's got to feel that somebody in there is speaking up for them, even if it's not a majority view. And so I think I always feel that people should celebrate politicians who will stand up and say something unpopular or controversial, because they're doing a great service to democracy. And in that, specifically, the thing I'm most proud of is the Better Off Out group, which I launched in Parliament back in April 2006, when I was at that time the first MP in Parliament who would actually stand up and say we should leave the EU. And obviously it was a rather fringe opinion back then. There was only me who would be prepared to stand up and say that in Parliament. And I'm very proud of how that's developed over recent years to the stage now where we could quite possibly have a referendum about whether or not we stay in or leave the EU, and we could ultimately leave. And that absolutely seemed a distant pipe dream back in 2006, and things have moved on very rapidly since then.
Talking about having a democratic view and stuff, I understand that you voted against going into Syria?
I did.
Yeah, can you explain why? Did you go to your constituents and ask them? Were you representing their view, or was it a personal view?
No, it was my personal view. I mean, the problem is with, people always say you should represent your constituents' views. The problem with that, although nobody really argues with the theory, in practice, without a referendum with 100% turnout of my constituents, I will never know what my constituents' majority view is. I know what people who email me think, but I never get to know what the silent majority think. So you have to, the whole point of our system of democracy in this country is you're given the authority by your constituents to go to Parliament, listen to the arguments, and make a decision based on what you think is the right thing to do for them and for the country as a whole. And so that's what I always do. The reason I voted against the government was I wasn't convinced of the case for any military action at all. And I didn't really think that the consequences of it had been thought through. The government were asking for some limited authority, including military action if necessary, to deal with the humanitarian issue caused by the use of chemical weapons. My concern was, if the limited action it doesn't work, and the Syrian regime keep using chemical weapons, what do we do then? Are we going to walk away and look really weak? Are we going to escalate into a full-blown war? Have we thought through the consequences of that? Are we going to get into a war with Russia, which could quite easily be the upshot if they supported the Syrians? It just didn't seem as if any of these things have been thought through. Did we really want to get involved in effect a civil war in Syria, where the rebels are probably just as vile as the Syrian regime? I just didn't think these things have been thought through properly, and the consequences have been thought through. And I thought it was something that, although we're all appalled by the use of chemical weapons, I wasn't convinced that us using military action was actually going to make the situation any better.
And as a last question, the purpose of this initiative is to get the BME voters, mainly the British Sikhs, to vote for the party that best represents their views. Is there anything you'd like to say to those voters?
Well, I think that one of the sad things is that many people from different ethnic minorities have voted habitually often for the Labour Party through tradition, history, whatever reason it may be, and I don't really see a sort of this idea that a certain community all think the same and all therefore should vote the same. To me, any ethnic minority community is like any other community. It's made up of individuals who all have their own views and all have their own values. And my view is rather than just to open up their mind to think about what each of the parties represent. Because I do actually think that many of the values that you see amongst ethnic minorities, particularly Sikhs, in terms of hard work and family values and things like that, I personally think are much more closely associated with the Conservative Party. So all I would ask people to do is not to go in with a pre-prepared view of each of the political parties, just to look at them all from a neutral standpoint and see which one actually best reflects their lives, their concerns. And I think many of them, if they did that, will actually decide that should be the Conservative Party.
Thank you very much.
Is that all right?
Yeah, perfect.
Good stuff. Good luck with it all anyway.
Yeah, it's getting there slowly.
How many people have you seen?
If you have any follow-up questions, or if you have any question for another Member of Parliament, please send them to yourbritain.yoursay@gmail.com, and I'll do my best in getting them answered. For now, keep an eye out on our website, www.yourbritainyoursay.blogspot.com. Subscribe to our social network sites to keep updated with what's happening in Parliament and more videos of this sort. On Facebook, we are under Your Britain, Your Say, and on Twitter, our tag is @your__Britain. Thank you for watching, and I hope you watch our future videos.